Hello everybody, Luke back once again, this time to break down everything we know about Final Fantasy VII's Part 2 of their popular remake. Part 1 came out back in 2020 and was one of the biggest games to come out that year. Now in 2021, we're left to wonder, when's Part 2 coming out of the wildly popular Final Fantasy VII Remake? Now, there's a lot we know, there's a lot we don't know, and there's a lot of rumors out there. We're going to try to break down everything, give you exactly what we know right now, and let you know what you should expect from some of the more credible rumors out there. First though, if you're new here, do me a big favor, hit the subscribe button, hit the thumbs up. It really does help us because it lets YouTube know you enjoy what we do here, and hopefully we can help you learn something new about the world of gaming as we break down new games, rumors, and so much more happening in the world of gaming. So what do we know about Part 2? Well, according to reports, the main holdup for Part 2 is support for the PlayStation 5. The director behind the game came out and has said that while Part 1's remake for PS5 was basically just a slight upgrade, Part 2 is starting basically from scratch to program it for the PS5. No word on if that means this will be a PS5 exclusive, but it does make it very likely that at best we'll get a slight port over to the PS4, but you may need a PS5 in order to get it. And they were very clear that that's the main holdup right now for PlayStation 5. Though, with the work on upgrading of Part 1 to bring it to the PS5 and all the other Final Fantasy VII projects, I'm sure that had a slight part to do with the delay in getting Part 2 out. Now, we'll have to wait and see for that. Now, we do have some news about the story, though, spoiler alert, if you have not played Part 1, you may want to skip forward a few minutes here, because the end of Part 1 has some big spoilers from what happened in the original game. So Final Fantasy VII Part 1 Remake ended with a complete 360 from the original story. Now, most of Part 1 very closely followed the original story. Even though it wasn't an exact one-for-one retelling of the original story, all the main plot points were there and many of the major events all happened. Now at the very end though, you had a massive battle that did not happen in the first game, and you were treated to some strange twists at the very end. One of the biggest is that there may be multiple timelines here, including one where Zack lived when him and Cloud fought to escape from their torturers, and totally rewrites the history of Final Fantasy VII. Now, with that hinting that there may be multiple storylines and that Final Fantasy VII Remake Part 2 may have a very different ending than the very first original game. Now, that's not a big surprise. Often remakes do diverge, but this would be a pretty massive one. The fact that Zack would be alive in the second version, and that some of the characters in Avalanche that died in the very beginning of the first Final Fantasy VII have mysteriously come back to life, really opens up Part 2 to go any way the game creators want. No longer do they seem to be tied to the original Final Fantasy VII story, though I would expect many of the big events to re-happen. It almost seems like we have two timelines going, two parallel universes, maybe we'll call them. One where Zack was killed like happened in the original story, and another one where Zack lived, and that totally changes the story in both parts. And the game also hinted that the world where Zack lives is the world we want to be in. There was many mentions that the original ending may not be what we want to have happen. For some time now, fans have had theories that the ending of Final Fantasy VII, the original one, actually resulted in the death of all humanity on that planet, and that anything that happened afterwards wasn't actually really canon, that people died. Now, a little bit of laughter added at the very end of Final Fantasy VII's original game seems to suggest that that did not happen and that human life was not wiped out on the planet when the game ended. But now the remake may be bringing back that popular fan theory that maybe, yeah, if we do relive the original game exactly as it happened, all of humanity will die at the very end. And that has many fans jump up and down in excitement that we may have a totally new story here. We'll have to wait and see. But Square Enix and the developers of the game have really hinted that Final Fantasy Part 2 will be very different from what we saw in the original game. So keep that in mind. Those are the popular rumors, those are the popular theories, those are the hints we're getting about the story right now. Alright, a few other things have been confirmed. More playable characters be coming to Part 2, not just ones like Red 13 and Sid that we saw in the very first game that were playable, but others that may not have been, like Zack, could be a playable character, and not just a little side story like in the original game, but a major character in the new Final Fantasy VII Remake Part 2. We're also looking at getting more of an open world game, where the first version had some open world elements. It was more linear in gameplay, much how the original game was very linear until you exited the city, got into the open world map. And that's maybe what we're seeing here with Part 2. And we are also looking at a large number of mini games reportedly being built for the game. Now, the first game had a massive amount of mini games and side stories and weird things to find and places to go that helped you if you went there, but were not required. The question now is, will that happen again in Part 2? We'll see. There will definitely be a lot of mini games and additional things. The question is, will they get the same number as we saw in the very first game? All right, let's talk about the release date. Now, the director behind it has said that they are working to get the game out as soon as possible. Now, though, reports are targeting that 2022 may be the earliest we see the game come out. Now, Square Enix has big plans with the game and reportedly does not want to rush it out, and they want to make sure they get the game right, possibly to give it the ending they always wanted to have in the first one. Also, they have many Final Fantasy games in development right now, and that could be slowing down the work on Part 2. We'll wait and see. Now, the big question is, will there be a Part 3? Now, reports are that there may not be. There is a lot of speculation that this will be a 3-part game because the first part, or the first game I should say, was released on 3 discs. The first part of the remake was disc 1 content, and that made people think that Part 2 would be the second disc and Part 3 would be the third disc. The thing about that, though, is the third disc in the Final Fantasy VII original PlayStation 1 release was mostly used just because they had so many large video files for the ending of the game. They didn't really need to have it if it wasn't for those large videos there. That has left many to speculate, and some reports to hint that Final Fantasy VII Remake Part 2 will be the final part of the game to come out in 2022, and that'll be the end of the remake. Maybe we'll get some other side stories or more to come out in the Final Fantasy VII universe. We'll wait and see. Though none of that's been confirmed, and Square's been extremely tight-lipped on a possible third part. So I would prepare yourself mentally for Part 2 to be the final part of the game, and if we get a Part 3, consider it almost to be a bonus there. So keep that in mind. Well, that's everything we know. Those are the credible rumors. Those are the credible reports that we can confirm and speculate on. What do you think? What are you expecting from Final Fantasy VII Remake Part 2? Leave me a comment, let me know. If you're new here, do me a big favor. Hit the subscribe button, hit the thumbs up. It really does help us because it lets YouTube know you enjoy what we do here. And hopefully we can help you learn something new about the world around you in the world of gaming. Until next time, take care, and thank you for your support.